The film opens with a scene of a young boy opening the door to his parents' room where they were engrossed in hormone activities. With a grin on his face, the child informs them that their pet dog is trapped in a mouse trap. The scene then shifts to a small dock where a woman named Laura is unloading her groceries from a boat with her husband Greg and their only child, Jamie. Since the town they live in is close to the sea, the boat serves as a common means of transportation there. While Laura and Greg are busy, suddenly their child Jamie falls into the water. Fortunately, there is a man named Elliot who manages to save Jamie and bring him to the surface. As a token of gratitude for saving their child, Greg and Laura invite Elliot to have dinner with them at their home. While eating, they discuss their respective jobs. It turns out that Greg and Elliot have something in common, as they both work as contractors. Laura complains that her husband is very busy and doesn't have time to fix their kitchen. Since he didn't have any projects at that time, Elliot offered his services to renovate the family's kitchen. Upon hearing this, Greg and Laura were instantly delighted and agreed to hire Elliot. That night, before going to bed, Greg seemed to invite his wife for hormone activities. However, Laura declined the invitation, citing that she was not in the right mood. The next morning, Elliot was seen starting to work at Greg's family home. Since her husband had gone to work, Laura approached Elliot. Perhaps due to the heat, Elliot showed Laura the new kitchen design without wearing his shirt. Laura, looking uncomfortable, was unwilling to spend more time with Elliot and excused herself to go take a shower. Unbeknownst to Laura, while she was in the shower, Elliot secretly entered her room and peeked at her. Later that afternoon, while shopping at the supermarket, Laura ran into Elliot again. They started to get along and talked about his family. Despite claiming to be close to his mother, Elliot seemed flustered when Laura asked where the woman currently lived. A while later, Elliot returned to Laura's house to continue his work. While he was working, he was approached by Mira, Laura's friend and neighbor from the house next door. Although married, the flirtatious Mira asked Elliot if he had a partner. He replied that he was still single but currently had someone he admired. Upon receiving a report from Elliot that someone had stolen the tarpaulin from her boat, Laura went to the dock with him. Once inside the boat, Laura was surprised to find the place in disarray. Behind a pillow, she also found a pair of purple underwear. Seeing Laura suddenly upset, Elliot asked what had happened. With a disappointed face, Laura confessed that she had found evidence of her husband's affair and was convinced that Greg's secretary, Hannah, was his mistress. Knowing that Laura was vulnerable, Elliot attempted to seduce the married woman. The next day, while working, Elliot learned that Laura was in the shower. He daringly followed her into the bathroom and proceeded to take off all his clothes. Without any resist, Laura allowed Elliot to touch her body. Some time later, feeling guilty, Laura went to meet her husband at the dock. Greg then informed Laura that their neighbor's boat had been secretly used as a place for young people to be intimate, and that underwear had been found inside the boat. Upon hearing this, Laura felt even more guilty as she had misjudged her husband. Later that evening, Laura immediately met Elliot and invited him to have a private conversation in the warehouse of her house. There, she asked Elliot to end their relationship. However, instead of complying, Elliot continued to provoke Laura by mentioning Greg's prioritization of his work. Gradually, Laura relented and resumed catering to Elliot's desires in the warehouse. After that, Elliot began to realize that he loved Laura and desperately wanted her. He even daringly presented flowers to Laura in front of Greg. Greg didn't suspect anything, as Elliot claimed that the flowers were a birthday gift for Laura that day. After her husband left for work, Laura immediately scolded Elliot, stating that she wouldn't leave Greg and ordered Elliot to stop working at her house. Later that evening, Laura was surprised by Greg, who threw her a birthday party and invited their friends to the house. Elliot and the secretary, Hannah, were also present. Hannah confessed to Laura that for the past month, Greg had asked for her help in organizing the birthday party. After Greg introduced Elliot, Hannah immediately took an interest in the handsome man. However, Elliot seemed uninterested and instead looked at Laura and Greg with a jealous gaze. Pressured by Hannah, Elliot had no choice but to entertain the blonde girl on his boat. They were intimate until Hannah realized that Elliot's stick isn't long enough. However, she accidentally saw a photo of Laura there and concluded that Elliot secretly had feelings for his boss's wife. In a fit of rage, Elliot mercilessly strangled Hannah with a rope. The next day, Elliot returned to meet Laura and forced her to leave Greg. However, when Laura's son Jamie suddenly appeared before them, Elliot became embarrassed and decided to leave the house. Feeling disturbed, curious Laura tried to find out about Elliot's past. She then met a woman who had reviewed Elliot's work as a contractor on a website. The woman named Winnie seemed reluctant to talk about Elliot. There, she only informed Laura that Elliot was someone who had ruined her marriage. The scene then shifted to the dock where a girl tried to retrieve her necklace that had fallen into the water. She was shocked by the presence of a floating woman's corpse. After an investigation by the authorities, it was revealed that the corpse was Hannah, Greg's secretary. Upon seeing the news about Hannah, Mira instructed her husband to contact Greg. Unbeknownst to Greg, Elliot had infiltrated his house and drugged him until he fainted. When Greg regained consciousness inside Elliot's boat, he managed to free himself. However, as he was about to escape, suddenly Elliot was in front of him and immediately attacked Greg until he lost consciousness again. Elsewhere, Laura was seen meeting an old woman who owned a cafe that Elliot used to visit as a child. There, she recounted Elliot's past, which revolved around his obsessive nature towards his own mother. Consequently, when his mother remarried, Elliot became jealous and decided to unalive his mother and stepfather. The old woman also added that yesterday Elliot had stopped by her cafe and informed her that he was going to marry a beautiful widow named Laura. Upon hearing this, Laura immediately concluded that Elliot had ill intentions toward her family. Unfortunately, when Laura contacted Greg, her husband didn't answer the phone. Upon arriving home, Laura was shocked to find that Elliot was already there. He said that he had gotten rid of Greg and again forced Laura to belong to him. However, because Laura continued to resist, Elliot dragged her into the room. With her hands bound, Laura tried to melt Elliot's heart. Laura pretended as if she also loved Elliot and wanted to marry him. Hearing these words, Elliot naturally felt happy and eventually agreed to release Laura's restraints. When Elliot pinned Laura's body down, suddenly Jamie appeared at the door and witnessed the scene. Seeing Jamie's reaction, Elliot was reminded of his past when he had witnessed his mother being intimate with his stepfather. When Elliot was distracted, Laura didn't waste the opportunity to beat him and escape with Jamie. Before Elliot could recover, Laura told Jamie to run to Myra's house for help. A few seconds later, Elliot immediately pounced on Laura. After Laura fainted, Elliot wrapped her body in plastic and took her to the boat. While Elliot was busy preparing his boat before sailing, Laura suddenly regained consciousness and tore the plastic covering her body with a knife. Using the same knife, Laura managed to incapacitate Elliot. Since Greg was severely injured, Laura was forced to leave him first to seek help. Suddenly, the injured Elliot chased after Laura again. There was a brief chase between the two of them before Laura was cornered and captured by Elliot. Laura's struggle was not in vain when she managed to kick Elliot out of the window, causing him to die instantly. At the end of the film, Laura is seen living peacefully and happily with her family.